Marianne has to take an early promotion exam, so she has been preparing diligently for it. She knew she needed to set aside a little more time to study, and would likely even need to review the materials again in her study group. Here, Marianne realized that preparation would take much more time than she thought. Mariana also noticed that her mother had a boyfriend again, and most likely they had been dating for about 2 months. Marianne hoped that this time, her mother would experience the separation from this man much more calmly. But then her mother ran into her room, and with happy eyes, she told her daughter that she was getting married soon. The girl was surprised, because previously, all of her mother's affairs ended after a couple of months. Mariana asked her mother if her new chosen one was also divorced, but the woman didn't answer. At dinner, the woman talked only about her fiancé. He was attentive to everything the woman did, which is why she fell head over heels in love with him. They got married so early because the man really wanted to tie the knot as soon as possible. This time, the woman finally gave in, but the man took full responsibility for the wedding preparations. Mariana told her mother that she felt like she had met a very good man this time, and the woman thought so too, because this time she felt that everything was completely different. In fact, Marianne thought that this relationship would last for some time, but she never expected that her mother would remarry. After all, only 6 months had passed since my mother signed the application for the second divorce. She swore that she would never marry again, but in the end, it was very much like her mother, and Marianne had already gotten used to it. The most important thing for her was that her mother was happy, because when she was happy, so was Marianne. There was only one problem that was bothering Marianne. With her mother, everything always happens unexpectedly. Here the woman smiled and told her daughter that her new chosen one would come to them during the day to get acquainted, and Marianne would have to change all her plans. Mariana agreed, but said that she would leave immediately after that, because she had a lot of things to do today, but half of them still had to be postponed. Mariana's mother left. She also had things to do. The girl was left alone at the table. She asked the maid, Dana, to bring her another cup of tea. Dana poured Marianne some tea. She understood that the lady had not chosen the best time, because Marianne had a very important exam coming up. Mariana reassured Dana that her mother hadn't done it on purpose. She wasn't the type of person who lived an ordinary life. Dana agreed with Marianne, because after all, her mother was none other than Madame Tatiana. Madame Tatiana, nicknamed Madame Titi, was once an opera singer from a provincial town with unrivaled talent and dazzling beauty. She attracted supportive patrons far beyond the capital. She was a star of high society. Up until the day she disappeared without a trace, countless people tried to find her, but there was not a single clue. One day, before she disappeared from the memory of fans, Tatiana made a dramatic return, causing a stir. And all because she did not return alone. Tatiana went out into public with a baby in her arms. Those who once admired her began to gossip endlessly about her little child. But Tatiana did not waver. Even without a father, she was ready to give her child everything possible as a mother. And so she became the outrageous but famous Madame Tatiana. Donna was worried about her mistress. After all, this was her third marriage, and she believed that she should not have rushed into it. Dana couldn't accept the fact that Marianne was still not ready because she needed to change her clothes and wash herself, even though the event was sudden. But Marianne knew that if she stood in front of her mother, no one would notice her, so she didn't care what she wore. Dana was upset. She did not understand how the young lady could say such a thing. Marianne apologized and said that she would definitely wear something appropriate so that Dana would not worry. Meanwhile, the carriage hurried to Tatiana's house. It had covered most of the distance. The man was glad that they had almost arrived. He couldn't wait to meet the girl. Meanwhile, Marianne was preparing for the meeting. She was choosing a suitable outfit. She was curious about what kind of man her mother would have this time. She hoped that he would be the one who would make her mother happy for a long time. On the outside, Tatiana looked absolutely naive, but on the inside, she was completely different. Then Dana knocked on Mariana's room. She asked permission to enter. She had important news. Dana came in and said that the lady had gone to get new jewelry and asked Marianne to go to the meeting place. Marianne nodded her head. She was glad that she would go herself, because she would not have to ride in this flashy carriage. Dana also informed Marianne that there was a strange carriage parked at their back gate. Marianne was surprised. Other people's carriages didn't appear there often, Dana assumed that the mistress had sent it for the young lady. Marianne thought that this couldn't be true, and that it was unlikely that anyone would park their carriage at someone else's gate without warning. Marianne thought that it was one of her mother's suitors again. Since Marianne was leaving soon, she decided to quickly convince them and send them back. Mariana went out into the backyard to the gate to quickly drive out her admirer. Seeing the carriage, Marianne was very surprised. She did not understand whether today was really some special day. Marianne couldn't understand why there was such a luxurious carriage parked at their back gate. Then someone started to get out of the carriage, and Marianne realized that it could be another admirer with taste like her mother's. And this meant that it would be more difficult to drive away this named guest than the others. But then a guy came out of the carriage with a bouquet in his hands. Marianne was surprised. She hadn't seen someone so young for a long time. Then the guy noticed Marianne. He thought that she was a servant of this family. He told her that she was just in time. Mariana was stunned by such a statement, but the guy asked her to come into the house and deliver a message from him. Mariana was still standing and silently looking at the guy. She did not understand who it was and what she should do. The guy smiled and told Marianne that today was a very important day for him. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. The guy came here to win the heart of the lady he has liked for a long time. Marianne realized that this guy was not joking. She believed that she needed to decisively drive him away. Marianne told the guy that, unfortunately, he would not be able to meet the lady of this house. Marianne told him that today, Madame Tatiana had an official meeting with her remarriage partner, a very pleasant gentleman. Marianne understood that this could break this young man's heart, but this pain had to be endured. Marianne told him that she believed he would be able to overcome the pain of loss and move on from it soon. Mariana asked the young man to stay strong and was about to go into the house. She thought that after this he would leave. But the guy wasn't going to go anywhere. He started stopping Mariana, who was almost home. The guy said that he knew that Madame Tatiana had a meeting today. Mariana was surprised. The guy turned out to be intrusive. This was far from her mother's type. Here the guy suddenly said that he had not come to see Madame Tatiana. He explained that he had arrived to escort her daughter, Lady Marianne. The guy begged her to call Lady Marianne to him, because he knew for sure that she was still at home. Mariana was surprised. She didn't understand anything at all. The guy said that he came for her, and not for her mother. This was the first time this had happened to her. For a while, the guy and Marianne stood and silently looked at each other. He was waiting for the maid to call Marianne, but she didn't know how to explain to him who she was. Then Marianne apologized to the guy for the misunderstanding that had arisen. She asked him to stop calling her a lady. The thing is that this title was really weighing on her. The guy stood and looked at Marianne in surprise. He was in shock and did not understand whether he was now standing in front of Lady Marianne herself. Marianne told the guy that he understood everything correctly, and she really was that same Marianne. The young man immediately began to apologize to Marianne. He didn't want to be rude to her at their first meeting, and Marianne understood everything. After all, anyone in his place would have made a mistake. She had already gotten used to the fact that she and her mother were completely different. Here the young man realized that he still had not introduced himself to Marianne. His name was Orion Miller. He was the young Duke of the Miller estate. Orion sheepishly told Marianne that from now on, he would be her brother, in a sense. And since today was a special occasion, Orion came to accompany Marianne. He apologized to her for not warning her in advance. Orion admitted that in fact, he, like Marianne, found out about it suddenly. Marianne noticed that the guy was very polite, and this impressed her. After all, being the son of a duke, Orion doesn't have to be so formal. Here, Marianne suddenly thanked the young duke and said that, unfortunately, she could not go with him. Orion was surprised. He did not understand what was going on. Marianne suddenly pointed forward and told Orion that her tastes were very different from her mother's. Marianne could not ride in such a noble carriage. She was far from all this. For her, it was too much. Orion asked Marianne what she was going to travel in. Marianne replied that she had rented a carriage, which was parked in front of the main gate. So Marianne said that she would go on that carriage. Then Orion suddenly said that he would go with her on her carriage. Marianne was surprised. Orion said that he wanted to go with her, so he was ready to sit in her carriage. Marianne said that he would be quite uncomfortable there, and maybe even uncomfortable. But Orion stood his ground. He wanted to go with her, so he was ready to endure any inconvenience. When Orion got into the carriage, he finally realized what he had signed up for. The carriage was too small, and they were not traveling alone. Orion's two companions almost crushed their master. Marianne asked Orion if he was sure everything was okay with him. Marianne saw that Orion was uncomfortable, but she still suggested that they go separately. Well, or Orion could have sat next to Marianne. She herself offered him, since she was sitting alone on that side. Orion pretended that everything was fine, and told Marianne that for the knights of the Miller estate, this discomfort was not a problem at all. Here Orion was supported by the knights. The man said that as knights, they cannot take a place next to a lady. Marianne didn't understand why Orion was going to such lengths. Did he really have such a compelling reason to accompany her? Marianne looked at Orion in silence. From his expression, she understood that he definitely wanted to tell her something. He was the duke of one of the 5 great estates of the empire, and Marianne thought he did not approve of the fact that a mother and daughter of humble origins were drawn into it so unexpectedly. Marianne thought that she should speak about it first, to relieve Orion of such a heavy burden. Marianne told the duke that he had nothing to worry about. He was surprised. He did not understand what she meant. Marianne explained to Orion that he did not have to register her in his family, and that she was not going to ask for financial support, just as her mother would not demand anything for marrying the duke. Marianne told Orion about her plans. She wanted to get an education at the academy and become an independent lady, so Orion didn't have to worry. Orion told Marianne that he didn't understand what she was talking about, because he hadn't even thought about it. The carriage suddenly began to shake, and Orion and his knights began to be shaken in different directions. Orion and the knights didn't say anything, but it was clear they were uncomfortable, so Marianne asked to stop the carriage. Mariana said that this wouldn't work, and since they were almost there, she could walk, which would be much more convenient for them. Orion didn't want to let Marianne go. He begged her not to leave, and said that everything suited him. Marianne walked and thought about whether she should have said that her mother thought the same as she did, that they didn't need help or something like that. Mariana will be independent after completing her education, and her mother has enough financial support to live without problems. But what she needs is love that makes her happy. Entering the premises, Marianne was delighted. The Duke had rented the entire cafe, and the carriage in which Orion arrived was also a luxury. Then Marianne understood what it meant to be a duke. Then Mariana heard her mother's voice calling her. Tatiana was sitting at a table next to a man. The fair-haired man looked at Marianne and greeted her. He said that he was very pleased to meet her. Mariana sat down at the table. The man said that he had prepared a modest place. Since this was their first meeting, Mariana thanked him. Marianne was perplexed. The Duke had rented such a magnificent place, but called it modest, while the man was surprised that Marianne had arrived alone. After all, his son had said that he would accompany Marianne, and the Duke thought that they had missed each other, since Orion insisted on doing it himself. Mariana said that in fact they didn't miss each other, but circumstances worked out in such a way that she simply arrived separately. Marianne told the Duke that his son would arrive soon, but the man still did not understand how Marianne could come alone. Marianne explained that since the carriage was a 2-seater, they were uncomfortable in it, so she came on foot. The man was even more surprised, because the carriage his son had taken was definitely not a 2-seater, and Marianne realized that she should have started somewhere else. Then Orion entered the cafe and apologized to everyone for being late, as it was very impolite of him to be late for the first meeting. Orion's father was angry that this brat could be late for such an important event. Tatiana tried to calm her fiancé and said that everything was fine. Orion began to sit down at the table. Marianne asked him for forgiveness for causing him inconvenience, but Orion said that everything was fine. Besides, it was he who came to Marianne without notice. He thought that he should apologize to her. Marianne looked at Orion. His hair was disheveled. His clothes were wrinkled. She understood that this situation irritated him, but instead of getting angry, he apologized to her. Besides, given the authority of the Duke's family, Orion is not obliged to be so attentive to her. But nevertheless, Marianne was glad. Her mother's fiancé didn't seem like such a bad person. All this time, Tatiana looked very happy. She kept laughing and looking at her fiancé with admiration. She was happy. But Marianne herself felt uneasy. She always thought that such events weren't very pleasant to attend. And that's what happened. Suddenly, the man asked Marianne if she didn't like their food. Marianne was confused. She said that of course it wasn't so. She just felt uneasy. Tatiana asked her daughter to calm down, because this was not her marriage. Marianne noticed that her mother felt calm, sitting in front of the imperial duke. Here the man put down his fork and started talking about Marianne. He was delighted, because she was still so young and was already moving on to the senior classes of the academy. He considered this to be a truly promising talent for the future. Marianne was embarrassed. She thanked the duke for his kind words. She said that it was thanks to her wonderful friends who guided her well. Orion asked Marianne not to be modest, because if it weren't for her merits, she would not have been able to achieve such results. Tatiana, Orion, and the duke directed all their attention to Marianne, which made her feel uneasy. She was not used to this. Tatiana noticed that her daughter was more nervous than usual. She understood that this could be because she was in an unfamiliar environment. Tatiana decided that there was no need for them to talk about everything at once and suggested that they just eat in peace. Lunch was drawing to an end, and Marianne still hadn't been able to touch dessert. The duke turned out to be a really good man. Marianne thought he would be stern, but he was not so attached to formalities and strict rules. Marianne was pleased that the duke was so caring throughout the meal, but for her, he was just her mother's new husband. As she thought, such events were too awkward for her. The duke said he thought a simple introduction and a small lunch would be enough for today. Since Marianne was already part of their family, the duke wanted to ask his son to accompany her, but he realized that Marianne was not inclined to this, so he decided to abandon this idea. Marianne exhaled and thanked the duke for his concern, but Orion was upset that he would not be able to go with Marianne again. Mariana left the cafe with relief. She was happy that it was finally over. It felt like it had lasted forever. But Mom looked very happy, so Marianne was willing to put up with it. Marianne had already walked away from the cafe, but then she heard Orion's voice. She turned and saw that he was running after her. Marianne thought he wanted to accompany her again. She told him he shouldn't do that, but Orion said he had something else he needed to tell her. Marianne decided that she needed to apologize to Orion for getting out of the carriage today and leaving him alone. But the Duke said that he did not want to talk about that, but about what she had said earlier while they were having dinner. He thought about it. Marianne asked Orion what he thought about them getting a notary statement from the Magic Tower. Orion didn't understand what Marianne was talking about. Marianne explained that it was difficult to believe what she had said earlier, so she suggested getting a notarized statement. Marianne believed that a blood oath was the easiest way, but over time there was a risk of discoloration. Now more and more people avoid it. Marianne thought that Orion would prefer a more proven method, but Orion told Marianne no. Then Marianne suggested that Orion wanted the traditional way with a blood oath, but Orion said that he didn't need that either. It seemed to Marianne that this was the most common method, but Orion couldn't stand it and got angry. He said that he didn't want either one. Orion told Marianne that he thought they would definitely need to have a thorough discussion about this someday. He sincerely and desperately believed that they simply needed to have this conversation. Marianne had no idea what exactly Orion wanted to talk to her about. She told him that he could make a contract with her in any way that suited him. Orion handed Marianne a small red box and asked Marianne to accept this gift. This was the area of communication. Orion asked Marianne to give him a clear answer when he contacted her. After this, the young duke left. Marianne stood and thought that Orion was a good man, but rather peculiar. Marianne stood and looked at the gift. She didn't understand whether she should look at the man's face before leaving. The guy was lying on the bed at his home. He heard Marianne's voice. She was telling him that she was hungry, but the guy didn't care about it. Marianne told the guy that she spent all her saved money to rent this carriage. Mariana stood in the square near the fountain. She was clearly waiting for someone. Here Marianne saw the man she was waiting for. His name was Zen, that same guy. She called him to her. The guy, hidden under a long cloak, slowly walked towards Marianne. Marianne knew what Zen was thinking, even from such a great distance. She felt that Zen was unhappy. Zen came closer to Marianne and nervously reminded her that he asked her not to call him when he was sleeping. Marianne smiled and said that since he was out, she wanted something tasty. Marianne reminded Zen that when he returned home, She would not go out because she had a lot of schoolwork to do. Marianne also really wanted to see Zen's face. She began to carefully remove the cloak from his face. Marianne opened Zen's face. In front of her stood a short guy with black hair and green eyes. It was clear from his eyes that he was angry. Marianne looked at Zen's face with admiration. She thought that today he was as beautiful as always. Zen grabbed Marianne's hand. He reminded her that he had asked her not to tease him and not to take off his hood without asking. But Marianne had no other choice. Zen's face was hard to see in the middle of the day. Marianne didn't understand why Zen was hiding such beautiful eyes. But Zen, without answering, pulled up his hood and turned away from Marianne. Zen didn't understand what Marianne was doing at lunch, that she didn't even eat, and he also didn't understand why she didn't take money for food. Marianne explained to Zen that although she had been to lunch, she had not been able to eat because the environment was rather uncomfortable for her. Here Zen seemed to understand what was going on, but he really hoped that everything was not as he thought. But from Marianne's reaction, Zen realized that everything was as he thought, and this woman got involved in this again. Soon Marianne and Zen were sitting in a local eatery, waiting for their food to cook. Marianne had already started eating lunch. She asked Zen to stop staring out the window and eat with her. After all, when the food gets cold, it won't be as tasty, and this place had the best spit. Zen said he didn't want to, but Marianne should have eaten. He considered her a hungry fool who couldn't even have a proper lunch. Marianne thought Zen should have been polite since he had agreed to pay for the meal. Mariana bit into a piece of meat and was delighted. She considered spicy street food much better than expensive cooking. Marianne asked Zen if he would mind if she ate it all herself, since he said he wouldn't. Zen said that she didn't have to hold back. Here Zen decided to talk to Marianne about why she left the house. He thought that the woman called her again. He was interested in what happened this time. Marianne wanted to avoid this conversation and suggested talking about something else, but Zen asked her to stay on topic. Marianne decided to tell Zen everything as it was. She told him that her mother was getting married again. Zen wasn't thrilled about the news, but he knew it would happen, and he wondered what kind of parasite her mother had found this time. Marianne told Zen that the man didn't look so bad, and that he also had a son, a little older than her. Marianne thought that she should tell him who her mother's fiancé was later. He was a duke. Marianne understood that her mother might refuse the wedding, so Marianne decided to wait until the papers were signed. Zen confessed to Marianne that he really hoped that her mother's new husband was not a nobleman. Zen hoped that the man was at least a low-class nobleman who was better than those eccentric artists. Marianne said she thought it was for the best, because the house would be much quieter while her mother was a newlywed. Zen asked Marianne what about that man's son. He wondered if he had been too arrogant and if he had been bothering Marianne, and she replied that he had been anything but. But Marianne admitted that Orion seemed like a slightly peculiar guy to her. Zen didn't understand whether Marianne really wanted to say that the young man was just another weirdo. Marianne said that he wasn't at all, but he looked at her rather strangely and intently. Zen was horrified. He didn't understand if this bastard was a pervert, but Marianne said that he wasn't. Zen and Marianne finished their lunch. They went outside. Zen was going to return home. Marianne was very grateful to Zen. She thanked him again for the food he bought her, and she was also grateful to him for coming to her for such a trifle. Here Zen again took up his old tricks. He asked Marianne if that vulgar freak had really harassed her. Marianne once again said that nothing like that had happened. Marianne couldn't understand why Zen was putting such terrible labels on Orion. Zen came closer to Marianne. She froze in place. Zen asked Marianne to call him if something happened, so as not to suffer alone. Zen was capable of dealing with any person, no matter who he was, even the Count himself. Marianne was incredibly grateful to Zen, but the thing was that her mother's new husband was a duke. After Tatiana's modest meeting with her relatives ended, preparations for the wedding proceeded quickly, but just because everything went quickly did not mean that the scale was small. The wedding venue was decorated with Tatiana's superb sense of taste, and judging by her tastes, it was clear that the wedding venue would be top-notch, and the very place where the wedding would take place turned out to be none other than the central temple where the coronation of the current emperor took place. Mariana didn't understand whether this was why her mother said that having nothing was also normal. But Marianne considered this simply wasteful. He could live so luxuriously. But all this time, he simply held back. Today, Marianne decided to simply explore the surroundings. Orion was watching her the whole time. Orion decided to show Marianne that he was there, and coughed. Marianne immediately turned in that direction and noticed him. The girl did not understand whether the young duke was also here to inspect the hall. After all, he was also a participant in the wedding. Marianne thought it would be better for them to pretend they didn't know each other and go about their business so as not to cause any inconvenience. But this didn't work out. Orion himself approached Marianne, and she had no choice but to be the first to greet him. A week had already passed since that lunch, and Orion was incredibly happy that he and Marianne were able to cross paths today. Orion asked Marianne if she was too busy. He tried to contact her several times through the crystal ball, but Marianne never answered him. Here, Marianne remembered that she had completely forgotten about the crystal ball. In fact, she thought that Orion had given it to her simply out of politeness. So, without thinking twice, Marianne left this ball somewhere on her desk. She didn't think that Orion would actually try to contact her. Marianne stood there and didn't understand what to do. Marianne thought that Orion would be upset if she told him the truth. Orion noticed that Marianne was a bit nervous and thought that the ball was broken. He said that if that was the case, it would be very easy to fix. Marianne decided it was best to tell Orion the truth. Marianne explained to Orion that she thought the crystal ball was a courtesy from the Duke's family. Marianne said that she didn't think Orion would actually want to contact her, which is why she was being overly careless. Orion told Marianne that the deadline was already pressing, and they needed to hurry. He did not understand why they could not discuss such an important thing as this. After all, they will soon become one family. Marianne explained that she thought her mother's new marriage would be short-lived, as always, so she didn't want to accept a new family every time. Marianne understood that there were proper customs and formalities in the ducal family, and she was ready to apologize for inadvertently ignoring them. But Orion said that was not what he meant. Orion explained that he only wanted to show respect for her opinion. He apologized to Marianne for misleading her. Orion was shocked. He did not understand the environment in which this lady grew up. She was so young, but possessed such erudition. Then, a man came out to the guys. He noticed a familiar outline, so he decided to come closer. It was the bishop. Marianne and Orion greeted him and asked how he was doing. The bishop said that he was always calm, because the Lord protects him. The bishop asked the boys to accept his congratulations. He was very happy, because they were both becoming one family. He kept crossing paths with Marianne, and there were good reasons for that. This was the 5th time, and Marianne said it had been a long time since they had asked the bishop to be the master of ceremonies. Orion was shocked. He whispered to Marianne that he heard that Tatiana had fewer marriages. Marianne only sighed heavily. Mariana began to talk about all of her mother's unsuccessful marriages. Tatiana divorced her first husband because of a scandal right at the wedding. The second husband was jailed for tax debt right before the wedding, in front of the bride. Mariana explained that, to be precise, and counting only weddings, this would be the 3rd time. Orion was shocked. He did not understand how this was even possible. The stories were impressive. The bishop thought he had said something he shouldn't have. Orion said it was okay, and he had seen many different people. The bishop said the number didn't matter. He believed that the most important thing was that 2 families were united for a good reason. The bishop wished that when Orion and Marianne were also united as brother and sister, only peace and quiet would reign in their home. The children were grateful to the bishop for such warm words. At this point, the bishop left the boys. He still had a lot to do. He said goodbye to them and left. Orion was shocked by the news he learned. Marianne understood that he needed to think it over himself, and it wouldn't hurt her either. Marianne turned to the young duke and said that she would probably go too, as she needed to go home to prepare for the ceremony the following day. Orion was a little upset that Marianne was already leaving. He offered to take her home. He prepared a special carriage for her. But Marianne flatly refused to go with Orion. She was flattered that he had decided to take care of her again, but she thought that this carriage would also be pretentious. Orion said that even then he realized that this was the problem, so he solved it, and now the carriage will be different. Marianne was a little scared. She was afraid to imagine what Orion had arrived on this time. Orion noticed Marianne's excitement and told her that she had nothing to worry about. He had taken into account all her wishes, and was sure that she would like everything. Orion led Marianne outside and showed her the carriage. It was indeed quite unremarkable. Black, small, and without any unnecessary decorations. Orion said that this time the trip would be different. He did not take knights with him, and the carriage looked completely different on the outside. Orion believed that this carriage was definitely the embodiment of the prostate, so he hoped that Marianne could ride with him in this carriage. Marianne realized that Orion had listened to what she had said last time. The Duke's family had a rather strict etiquette. They took even the most ordinary escorts seriously, so Marianne thought that she should not refuse him this time. Marianne thanked the young Duke and accepted his care. Orion beamed with happiness. He hoped that Marianne would like the inside of the carriage too. Orion admitted that he ordered the interior design for a smooth and comfortable ride. It turned out that Orion had taken the carriage he had arrived in, custom-made by the Magic Tower, and had furnished it as modestly as possible to make Marianne comfortable. Orion admitted that the carriage had been a bit cramped back then, but this time they would be able to travel in comfort. Marianne was stunned. She couldn't believe her ears, because Orion said that he had made something to order at the Magic Tower. In the Magic Tower, where even the most ordinary order can cost thousands of gold, Marianne was shocked because Orion ordered a luxurious carriage to look simple. Orion offered to help Marianne get into the carriage. He promised that he would carefully deliver her home. Marianne didn't understand anything, because in front of her stood an ordinary young duke. She couldn't understand whether all nobles were really that crazy. Soon the carriage arrived at Marianne's house. Orion also helped her out. Marianne thanked him for the escort. Orion had been calling Marianne his lady all this time. He told her that there was no need to thank him so much, because he hadn't done anything special. Marianne was a little embarrassed by this. She asked Orion to talk to her more simply. She would really like him to call her simply by her first name. Orion was delighted. He thought that Marianne was trying to get them to become closer. He was glad that he had sorted out the carriage. Orion thought that it would take him a lot of time to get closer to Marianne, and Marianne did not understand what he was even thinking about. Marianne asked Orion if he should go back and also continue preparing for tomorrow. Orion thought that Marianne was worried about him, and he was pleased. Orion said that he would also go home. He thought that Marianne also had a lot of things to do. Marianne agreed with Orion. She thought that it would be better if he returned right away. Orion approached the carriage and said goodbye to Marianne until tomorrow. Tomorrow they were definitely supposed to see each other at the wedding ceremony. After this, the carriage, together with Orion, rushed to the ducal domain. Marianne stood and watched the departing carriage. She considered Orion a real weirdo. Duke Miller's house, the vice captain, as always, was conducting training with the knights, but someone distracted him. Beihan Run, vice captain of the Knights Order of the Miller Duke's estate. Beihan didn't understand what all the fuss was about in the courtyard. Then one of the knights ran up to him and said that the captain had already returned. Beihan was surprised, as he thought that the captain would return later. Beihan thought about it. He didn't understand if things weren't working out between Orion and his future half-sister. Beihan ordered the knights to restore order and prepared to meet the captain. The knights stood in a row. Orion walked past them. Beihan was perplexed. Orion walked past them and said nothing. The knights were scared. They didn't understand what had happened, that Orion had become like this. They thought that today their training would be a hellish test. But Beihan told the knights that they would train as usual. It seemed to him that Orion was in a great mood today. Orion saw in the office and thought about what he should call Marianne now. Since he could no longer call her lady, he decided that he would call her his Marianne. Then Beihan came into his office to find out how everything went. He was sure that everything was fine, since he looked lively. Orion said that Marianne could not take her eyes off her while they were riding in the carriage, and he believed that Marianne was touched by his devotion. Orion said it was a chance to get closer, and Marianne said he could talk to her casually. Beihan didn't understand whether Orion was happy only because Marianne allowed him to abandon formality in his speech. Beihan believed that if people saw Orion now, they would faint from shock. Society decided everything there, and if it finds out that the same Orion, known for his icy indifference, was able to make such an expression, then it will definitely be shocked. Orion suddenly stood up and told Beihan that if it weren't for his nonsense, He and Marianne would have been able to become closer much sooner, and his strange advice only slowed down the process. Behan didn't understand what advice Orion was talking about, but he reminded him that he advised giving flowers to ladies at every meeting, or that Orion should amaze her with the most luxurious things. Because of all this, Marianne felt burdened. Behan was surprised. He thought it was strange, because those things would have pleased any noble lady. Orion told Behan that Marianne was different, and he could not put her in the same place as other ladies. He believed that his little sister was very smart and gifted. Behan was surprised that Orion was already calling Marianne his little sister, because for Orion, family played a special role in his life. The empire was divided into three main noble factions, the first being the noble faction led by the Duke of Hastings, whose family had long been allied with the royal family. The second is the imperial faction under the patronage of the Duke of Bolton, who has sworn allegiance to the crown. And finally, the third, neutral faction under the patronage of Duke Miller, who does not take anyone's side. Due to their strict neutrality, the Miller family always lived in seclusion, which is why Orion was always lonely. Moreover, after losing his mother as a child and being alone for a long time, all Orion wanted was a family with whom he could truly open his heart. Behan knew that Orion was not one of those people whose head would be too turned by this. The only daughter of the famous Madame Tatiana, unlike her mother, she does not like being the center of attention. Behan was incredibly curious about why this was so. He was sure that he would meet her at the wedding tomorrow. Behan really wanted to take a look at her, at least with one eye, so it wouldn't be bad even if they just greeted each other. Here Orion suddenly became angry. He did not understand why Behan wanted to see his little sister. Behan said that he didn't think anything bad. He just wanted to look at Marianne to understand what kind of person she was. But Orion believed that Behan's very thought was not pure, so he took him out of his office. Behan was perplexed by what had happened. He realized that this time it was definitely a serious case. The wedding day arrived. Tatiana's wedding in the central church was in all its splendor. They received congratulations from a large number of people. Marianne stood to the side with some girl and watched all this splendor. The girl's name was Reina Roki. She was delighted. It was the greatest wedding she had ever seen. Marianne completely agreed with Reina. She had never seen such a celebration in her life. Marianne hoped that this was the first and last wedding of its kind. It was so huge and impressive that it took Marianne's breath away. Reina reminded Marianne that they were at Madame Tatiana's wedding, so this was to be expected. Ordinary people would never even dream of such a thing. Reina was surprised that Marianne hadn't invited Zen to the wedding, even though she knew it would be difficult to get him to come to such a place. Marianne told Reina that Zen was there and didn't come here because he doesn't get along with Tatiana at all. Reina told Marianne that Zen was very angry. He kept asking her about Tatiana's new fiancé and even touched on Marianne's new brother. Zen thought Orion looked like a pervert and a deep-pocketed type who only spent money on weird things like kinky noblewomen. Marianne was upset. She tried many times to explain to Zen that this was not so. She hoped that he would come to his senses soon. Marianne told Reina that Zen was wrong, and Orion was not like that at all. Marianne knew better than anyone that Orion was different, and in general, she did not understand what difference it made what kind of person he was, because people change almost every day. But Reina thought that in this case it was important, because a certain blonde man had been staring at Marianne for a long time. Reina, from the description, understood that this was the very Orion who would become her brother. Marianne started asking Rainey to lend her some money. She said she owed the man. Marianne told Rainey that while she was frantically searching for the communication ball, she stepped on it and broke it. Marianne understood that it was only her fault. She was so careless. She promised Rainey that she would soon return her money. Rainey asked Marianne not to worry, because this amount was still not particularly small for her. Besides, Reina Roki was worth nothing without money. Reina was the highest of the newly minted, who made a fortune in the mining industry. Marianne was incredibly grateful to Rainey, who told Marianne that money solves any problem, so she just needed to say if she needed help. Rainey looked at Marianne and asked what she thought about using her money to intimidate Orion. Marianne didn't quite like this idea. She was even a little scared by Rainey's thoughts. Marianne asked her friend to simply give Orion the money for the sphere. Meanwhile, the wedding ceremony began. and the newlyweds were wished joy and noble love. Rainey didn't understand why the wedding was taking so long. She was desperately hungry. Marianne reminded that the bishop himself had come to conduct this ceremony. Rainey believed that it was more than just a holiday. The papacy was involved in a power struggle with the imperial family, and they clearly wanted to gain influence through a neutral faction. Marianne could see that Rainey was irritated, but she knew perfectly well that it was not the bishop who was irritating her. Not far from them stood a young fair-haired guy named Burton Grimaya. He proved himself to be the youngest holy knight. With amazing skills and a humble nature, he was incredibly attractive and captivated countless female students of the academy. But to Rainey, he was the most disgusting guy on the planet. And there were reasons for that. Marianne thought Rainey was still angry about the betting money the academy confiscated, but Rainey said that wasn't true. Rainey said she just can't stand these sycophants who cling to the teacher's authority. Marianne knew that the stakes were actually too high to play with students, and Bertin was simply following the professor's instructions. Mariana suggested forgetting about it and getting ready to receive guests. She was going to go to her mother to talk and change. Marianne ran to her mother, but on the way, she was met by the bishop, who asked Marianne how he should now address her. He thought that since the registry entries had been updated, it would be appropriate to call Marianne Lady Miller. When Orion approached Marianne, the bishop greeted the young duke and asked how he was doing. He was glad because he could congratulate Orion personally. And since Lady Marianne was mature and well-mannered, the bishop believed that she would fit perfectly into the joy and well-being of the Miller's house. Marianne was confused. She did not understand why he was giving her such compliments. Orion thanked the bishop and said that their Marianne always amazed them with her brightness and charm. Marianne did not understand why Orion was joining this conversation at all. Here the bishop told Orion and Marianne that he wanted to introduce them to someone about their age. The bishop called the man. It was Bertin, the heir of the Grimia family. He told Marianne that it was an honor for him to see her. Marianne told Bertin that she too was very pleased to meet him, and introduced herself to him as Marianne Bertin, Madame Tatiana's daughter. Orion was confused. He didn't understand what was happening. Marianne's mother had just gotten married, but the girl still didn't use the Miller's name. The bishop was very happy that fate had brought Marianne and Bertin together. He considered them a very beautiful and charming couple, so he suggested having a cup of tea together. But then Orion intervened in the conversation. He said that it was time to end all this. He did not think it was appropriate to arrange meetings for the young lady Marianne. Besides, Mariana was busy, as she was a student. She had many responsibilities that she should not be distracted from. Orion also did not pass by Burton. He asked him if he, as a holy knight, should devote himself to training in a practical group. Burton said that protecting the bishop is also part of the service. Burton thanked Orion and said that he would definitely take his valuable advice to heart. Marianne was surprised. She didn't understand whether Orion was really defending the political neutrality of the Miller family. Orion was angry. He didn't understand how they even dared to think about trying something with Marianne. He was glad that he was there in time. Orion told Marianne that he could see that they were both very focused and suggested that she see her mother later if she was going to do so now. Orion also understood that Marianne needed to change clothes and offered to accompany her, but Marianne refused. Marianne didn't want to cause Orion too much trouble and inconvenience, but Orion said that accompanying his sister was still part of his role as an older brother. Marianne was not particularly happy that Orion still considered her his sister. Orion said that now they were one family, and she was his younger sister. Orion asked Marianne to call him her brother. Brother Orion, he really wanted that. Marianne was shocked. This statement was too unexpected for her. She didn't really want to call Orion her brother. Orion, from Marianne's reaction, realized that it was difficult and awkward for her to call him brother. So he said that she could start with her older brother. This made Marianne even more confused. She didn't know what to say to Orion. Orion understood everything, so he told Marianne that his role as the older brother could be put on hold. Here, Marianne ran into the first door she came across. She began to look for a way out. Orion gave her goosebumps. The sight of him made her shudder. After some time, Marianne sat with Rainey. The girl believed that they were now the perfect couple. Marianne had earned a high social position, while Rainey was simply rich. Rainey suggested that Marianne put in their place those arrogant individuals who only do what they can to flaunt their middle names. Marianne could understand why Rainey looked upon aristocrats with disdain. The Rainey house, having recently been raised to the nobility, had long been regarded as the home of upstart merchants. They had suffered endless slander, contempt, and ridicule because of their origins, so Rainey looked at the aristocrats with disgust. Then Burton approached the girls. He greeted the girls and decided to stay with them for a while. Duke Miller had considerable military power, and although he was difficult to convince, he wanted to at least show his intentions to maintain good relations. Rainey was furious. She couldn't understand whether Bertine, instead of coming to offer prayers, had come to play political games. Rainey couldn't help herself. She wanted to pounce on Bertine right then and there, but Marianne managed to hold her back. Here Burton started talking about Zen. He was sure that he was now beside himself with rage. Marianne imagined what could happen to Zen now. She decided to just concentrate on finishing everything calmly and leaving. After some time, Burton noticed that he had been chatting with the girls for too long. It was already late, and he still needed to say hello to someone else. Burton began to leave. A crowd of girls gathered around him, trying in every way to get his attention. Rainey was upset to see this, because all these girls cared about was their looks. But Marianne reminded Rainey that she only cared about money. But Rainey told Marianne that it was a completely different matter, because money was good in every way, as long as it wasn't counterfeit. Then Orion approached Marianne and said that he wanted to introduce her to someone. Marianne was scared because Orion appeared too unexpectedly. Orion wanted to introduce Marianne and Behan. He explained to Marianne that Behan serves as vice captain in their Order of the Blue Knights Duchy. Behan approached Mariana and greeted her. He said that it was a great honor for him to meet her. He had heard a lot about her. Marianne again introduced herself to him by her old surname, Burton. Orion couldn't understand what was going on. He wanted Marianne to introduce herself as Miller. Orion reminded Marianne that, as she herself knew very well, the meal had long since ended and the reception of guests had begun. That's why Orion asked Marianne to introduce herself as Miller. Marianne thought that before this had been considered strange in front of the bishop, but now she realized that Orion wanted her to introduce herself as his last name. There were only a few times in Marianne's life when her surname changed, but usually it was immediately changed back to Burton. Mariana introduced herself to Behan again, this time as Mariana Miller. It was strange for her to introduce herself with a new last name. It was her first time doing so. Orion was delighted. He was overwhelmed with emotion. The only reason why Marianne did not introduce herself with a different surname was that her mother was quickly getting divorced. Here, Marianne introduced the guys to her best friend, Rain. The girl said that she was very pleased to meet them. Orion was familiar with her last name. He had heard that her house had paved trade routes with the eastern continent. Orion told Rainey that he really hoped she could have as much fun with his little sister. Rain said it was obvious, since Marianne was her best friend, and they had a good time together. Orion and Rainey stood opposite each other. Tension arose between them. Marianne did not understand why they were focusing on such things. Mariana was very tired that day. She didn't want to separate them. The only thing she wanted was to go home and rest. Marianne and Rainey decided to leave. Orion stopped them. He told Marianne that he heard that her mother had a lot of things that needed to be moved when moving. He asked if they needed to send some servants to help. Marianne turned around and thanked Orion, but said that no help was needed and that her mother could handle it herself. Mariana decided to advise her mother to pack only the essentials, since it would be inconvenient if she had many houses again. Marianne thought that her mother would soon get divorced, and she also thought it was strange to return home on the first day of marriage. Orion still didn't lag behind Marianne. He asked her to allow him to help in any way, because they were already a family. Orion reminded Marianne that she also had something to transport. He thought he could help her with this, but Marianne did not understand why he needed to transport her things. Orion told Marianne that she should have a lot of personal belongings too, but suddenly it occurred to him that this might not be the case. He didn't understand whether Marianne really had so few things that they could all fit in her hands. Here, Marianne realized that there had been a misunderstanding. She explained to Orion that she had no intention of moving to the duchy's domain. Orion did not understand why Marianne did not want to move in with them, Marianne noticed that Orion was very upset. Marianne thought that she would be completely uncomfortable living with her new family. This was the main reason, and Mariana also explained that she lived in the academy dormitory and that she would be there at the beginning of the new semester. Orion asked Marianne why they couldn't just spend more time together to become closer, because they were a family. Orion called Marianne to follow him, but Marianne said that she needed to get involved in the educational process, so she wanted to stay in the dorm. But Orion again didn't understand anything, because there are so many interesting things in the world, and Marianne was enrolled in studies. The girl explained that now only studies have authority for her. Orion said that he was very sorry, because he had already hired a large number of servants for Marianne and her mother. Marianne was upset. She realized that she should have told Orion earlier that she would not live in his house. Here, Behan intervened in the conversation. He decided to play on pity and told Marianne that now, all these servants would be left without work again. Behan asked Orion if these servants weren't the ones who dropped out of school to help their brothers and sisters. Marianne couldn't believe it. Then, Rainey came out and asked Orion to provide these servants to her, so that she could place them in her sales company. Marianne tried to stop her friend. She thought that this decision was spontaneous, but Rainey said that she still had nothing to lose. Rainey said that, unlike some who get rid of people unnecessarily, she would even be able to take care of their training. Marianne was happy for these people. They were in good hands. Orion realized that he had lost. Rainey gave Marianne a ride home. The girl thanked her friend, who said it was nothing, and asked Marianne to be on her guard. Rainey believed that if Marianne stopped being careful, there was a risk that she would simply be drawn into the Duke's family. Dana was already waiting for Marianne at the threshold of the house. Marianne greeted her, and Dana was glad to see the young lady. Mariana asked Dana if her mother was home. The maid said that Tatiana had already returned, and also that she had been drinking. Mariana decided to go to her mother. She entered her room and saw that her mother was sitting by the window with a bottle of alcohol. The room smelled very strongly of alcohol. A couple of empty bottles were lying on the floor. Mariana went up to her mother and asked her why she was sitting on the windowsill. Because it was dangerous. She said that it was because she felt very good. Mariana thought that her mother was in such a good mood because so many people came to her wedding. Tatiana asked her daughter if this caused her much inconvenience. Mariana said that as long as her mother was the star of the day and enjoying herself, she felt good too. And Mariana also knew that her mother enjoyed such interesting activities. After this, Marianne put her mother to bed. She was very drunk and needed to sleep it off. Tatiana liked it when things were noisy and lively around her. Marianne found it difficult to get along with her, but if the one she loved was happy, then she was also pleased. Before falling asleep, Tatiana promised her daughter that this would definitely be the last time, that this marriage would be the last. Tatiana had never told her daughter anything like that. She couldn't understand whether she was really in love this time. Morning came. The servants were loading Tatiana's things into the carriage. She asked her daughter if she was sure that she definitely did not want to go with her. Mariana once again told her mother that everything was fine and that she was much more comfortable living in the dorm. And besides, she no longer wanted to get involved with the Miller family. Tatiana admired her daughter and was very proud of her. Marianne wanted to tell her mother that they would see each other later, but she remembered her mother's words, that this marriage would definitely be her last. Marianne didn't know if her mother even remembered what she had said, but since she had said it, saying that they would see each other later somehow was not appropriate. Marianne simply asked her mother to take care of herself. She hoped that she and the Duke would get by without any quarrels, and with his son too. After some time, Marianne finally received a letter of recommendation from the professor. She was incredibly happy. Marianne didn't know that the professor would notice that she was deliberately keeping her grades at a level above average. But Marianne was glad that the professor turned a blind eye to this and didn't say anything to her. She didn't want to stand out too much. Mariana suddenly collided with some guy, and her entire stack of papers flew across the corridor. Marianne was in despair. She had just put everything together correctly, and now they were all mixed up again. A guy named Trevor Barrel apologized to Marianne. He explained that he was in a hurry and didn't notice her. He began to help Marianne collect the papers. Marianne realized that this was the guy in front of her who would take the promotion exams with her. She thanked Trevor for his help and said that everything was fine. Trevor read a little of the notes while he was collecting the sheets and told Marianne that he had planned to go over the same topic. Marianne was surprised. She thought that Trevor, like everyone else, would choose the simplest and most popular topic. Trevor Barrel, a top student who had remained in high school throughout his first year, was rumored to be adopted into a family from the Duchy of Amber. In addition, Trevor was an exemplary student. He was very popular with everyone at the academy, and knowing Marianne, an almost invisible girl, this was a surprise for her. Trevor told Marianne that they were worthy opponents and offered to seal it with a firm handshake. Mariana decided to go to her friend, who for some reason was stuck to the window. Mariana didn't understand what she saw there. Rainey told Marianne that this was just madness. A carriage drove up to the entrance outside the window, which looked a little modest. Marianne said it was nothing special since everyone came to school by carriage. But Rainey said it was not just an ordinary carriage. Rainey said that this carriage only looks unremarkable, but it is made of magically treated green wood. They imbued the highest quality wood with magic to make it last longer. Rainey also asked Marianne to look at the horses. Horses with such a pedigree cannot be found in any race. And also from the coachman's posture and appearance, it is immediately clear that he exudes aristocracy. Rainey was beside herself and ran away, telling Marianne that she couldn't lose and that she had to find something like that right now. Marianne didn't understand what was happening, but Rainey was full of energy. Marianne decided not to pay attention to it, because it wasn't her they had come to pick her up. But Marianne was wrong. Behan and one of the knights were waiting for her at the carriage. Orion was inviting Marianne for a cup of tea. Orion tried to contact Marianne through the communication device, but Marianne did not answer him, and she also returned the invitation letters. Marianne had ignored the young duke all this time, only because she wanted to focus on preparing for the exam. Behan told Marianne that the young duke was eagerly awaiting her arrival. Marianne couldn't refuse, and she wouldn't have been able to break away from Behan, so Marianne rode in this carriage. Mariana was in despair. She realized that it would be difficult for her to prepare for the exams, because first, her mother was getting married before her exams, and now her stepbrother bothers her every time with his tea party. Marianne had no time for it at all. Behan thanked Marianne for finally agreeing to go, and said that Orion would be in seventh heaven. Rainey had been watching that same carriage all this time, so she saw Marianne get into it. Rainey wondered how hard it would be to coat the carriage with a color-preserving and storage spell. Zen said it wasn't difficult if there was a wizard on horseback, but there wasn't one, so it was the person casting the spell, more of a mid-level mage. Rainey wasn't surprised. After all, it was the miller's house, and she figured Marianne was involved with a pretty tough opponent. Here Zen perked up. He didn't understand what Marianne had to do with it. Rainey was offended by the fact that Zen only answered when it came to Marianne. Rainey said it was all because of Madame Tatiana's new child, the Duke's son and Marianne's half-brother. Rainey told Zen that she was sure that Marianne would figure everything out on her own, and besides, they were already related. Then, Zen suddenly started using magic. Rainey was scared. She didn't understand what he was going to do. Zen said that Marianne was now on the top floor of the coffee shop. Rainey was surprised. She didn't understand if Marianne was still under his spell, showing her location. Rainey said that Marianne could have agreed to it herself, and Zen would be a crazy idiot if he went there and caused a commotion. But Zen had already decided everything for himself. He didn't even hear what Rainey was telling him. A moment later, Zen had already disappeared. This irritated Rainey beyond belief, but she understood that it was not her fault, and she simply would not have had time to stop him. A private room of a coffee shop, Orion was already sitting there. Having studied the menu, he said that it would be just black coffee. Orion looked at Marianne and asked what she would take. Marianne said that it would just be orange juice. Orion thought it was cute that Marianne liked orange juice, but Marianne only ordered it because he seemed to want to drink it himself. 10 minutes ago, Orion couldn't decide what to order. He was thinking between orange juice and chocolate pudding. Orion was brought his coffee, and he asked Marianne if this was the time her classes at the academy usually ended. Mariana said that she usually finishes her lessons later because she studies hard for exams, but today she just had to finish early. Orion decided to ask Marianne how she was doing at the academy. He was interested in whether she had found friends. Marianne reminded that her best friend is Rainey. Orion remembered about Lady Roki. Orion sat and thought about whether he should check on her friends. Orion told Marianne that he heard she was preparing for the promotion exams. Orion knew a genius who got in early and then immediately became a senior. Then he transferred from the public academy to the imperial one. Orion was ready to ask that man to help Marianne with her studies. Marianne could not understand what person Orion was talking about, but Orion was referring to himself. Marianne told Orion that she didn't need help. She believed that everyone should make an effort to study on their own. Orion said that it was a very noble thought, but he believed that having an assistant would help him improve his skills. Marianne seemed to understand what was going on. She thought that Orion must want to strictly control everything in order to maintain the prestige of the Duke's family. Marianne thought that since the name of the ducal family was at stake, he would be strict about it. She believed that Orion would feel calmer if there were clear results. Orion just wanted to teach his little sister how to study. Marianne said that it was time for her to leave, since she still needed to prepare for exams. Orion was shocked that Marianne was leaving so quickly. Marianne thanked Orion for the offer and said that she could do without a mentor. Orion told her that she had misunderstood him. Marianne didn't listen to Orion. Then he shouted at her that grades weren't important. And then something strange started happening in the room. Orion realized from the very first minutes that this was the work of a sorcerer. He asked Marianne to run away and hide. Then Zen appeared in the middle of the room. Zen asked Orion to give him the girl standing behind him. Marianne did not understand anything. She was interested in how Zen knew where she was. Orion asked Marianne to stay behind him and not to worry about anything. He said that he would take care of this sorcerer. Zen attacked Orion when he was left unguarded. Orion asked Zen what faction he was from. Zen asked him to give him Marianne. Here, Marianne intervened in their conversation. She asked Zen to calm down, because he was just her older brother. Orion was shocked that Marianne called him brother. Zen said that he knew about it, because it was him that Marianne called a terrible pervert who undresses people with his eyes. Orion felt awkward and even offended, and he asked Marianne if she had really said that. Marianne turned to Orion and said that this was, of course, not true. She really hoped that Orion would believe her. Then the guys calmed down and sat down at the table. All of them felt a bit awkward, except Zen. Marianne explained the situation to Orion again and said that she had not said such a thing. Burton was sitting at the table next to Zen, and it seemed to him that all this was written on Zen's face. Orion asked Marianne not to worry and said that he understood everything because anyone can stumble over words during a conversation. Marianne said that she wanted to explain later, but Zen was too hot-tempered. Marianne looked at Bertine and asked why he came here at all. Burton said that it was Rainey who asked him to stop Zen, because he could go crazy, so Burton, as the most responsible one, went to stop Zen. Orion asked Burton if this was not the first time Zen and Burton had seen each other. Burton said that they had both already known each other. He was so popular that he asked Zen not to pretend he didn't know him in busy places. Orion believed that the four of them had been close to each other for a long time. Close enough at least to make such claims. Marianne said something like that, but she didn't think Bertine could do anything to Zen. Rainey stood in the hallway and waited for her friend. She couldn't find a place for herself, as she was worried about her. Soon Marianne left the office. Rainey immediately ran to her and started asking how everything went. It was the first exam. Mariana said that everything was fine, and the exam wasn't that difficult. Only the second exam remained, where they would test on the chosen research topic. Marianne said that the topic she had chosen was the Land of Death. Marianne was going to look for more material in the library, with the help of the young lord who had given her this opportunity. The Land of Death refers to a mystical, corrupted land on the continent. It is teeming with monsters, and because it is such a dangerous region, most people have lost interest in it. Then Trevor approached the girls and asked Marianne how she was doing on her exam. Marianne said she did well. Trevor was happy. He thought he had barely passed the exam. He asked Marianne if she wanted to study with him. After some time, Marianne arrived at the Miller Duchy estate to search for information in the library. Behan went out into the courtyard to meet Marianne. He was ready to take her to the library. They had prepared all the necessary materials in advance. Behan noticed Marianne's agitation and said that Orion was not at home and she could feel completely calm. But Marianne was worried about something completely different. She walked and thought about what happened at the academy after passing the exam. Marianne felt that if her schedule with Treeworm didn't match, then it wouldn't help her. She would just leave immediately. Marianne asked Rainey if it was possible that Trevor Barrel knew her real name and something about her personal life. Rainey reassured her friend and told Marianne that this was impossible. Her personal life was safe. Even the professor would not have been able to find information about her. Marianne didn't understand what was going on then, because Trevor Barrel suddenly began to behave friendly towards her. Here, Bayhan distracted Marianne from her thoughts, saying that they had already arrived at the library. Marianne was delighted. The library was huge. It was very spacious and bright. There were many shelves with books around. Mariana noticed a stack of papers on the table. It was a collection of notes about the country of death. This was already enough to just pick up and use. Marianne had no idea how much effort she would have to put in to live up to these expectations. Bayhan noticed that Marianne had been acting strange and thoughtful since she found the notes, and he asked her if it had really touched her. Marianne said she felt a little uneasy. She said that with such great support, she would do her best to live up to their expectations. Bayhan told Marianne that he already understood that she was the kind of person who wanted to repay kindness with kindness. Bayhan said that the reason for their actions, their help with the library, was not grades at the academy. Bayhan told Marianne that their commander had been feeling sad for several days now. Orion arrived at the estate. The servants greeted him and said that the guest was already waiting for him at the estate. Orion did not understand which guest they were talking about, because he was not expecting anyone. The servants said that they meant Marianne. Orion was immediately delighted, having previously told Bayhan that he had failed to make a good impression on his younger sister. Bayhan told Marianne that the person she would meet when she left this room did not need a nice greeting. A kind one would be enough for him. Marianne left the room and met Orion in the corridor, who was in a hurry to catch up with her. He asked Marianne to stay for dinner. Bayhan told her that if she felt at peace only after repaying the kindness shown, then it was worth it. Marianne agreed to dinner and was soon sitting at the table. The table was overflowing with various dishes. Orion said that she could eat as much as she wanted. He didn't know what she liked, so he prepared everything. Marianne was shocked. She thought it was too much and believed that she should have refused the offer. Marianne realized that Orion was taking this matter very seriously, so it would be impolite to refuse the invitation to dinner. Marianne decided to first deal with the way Orion was staring at her. Orion was watching Marianne eat. He wanted her to eat well. Marianne asked Orion if he had just returned from official duties, and Orion replied that he had. He asked Marianne what brought her here. Marianne replied that she came to use the office to prepare for the exam. Orion didn't understand whether his little sister had prepared for the exams alone. Marianne said that Sir Rune had helped her find the materials. Orion was angry because Bayhan told him that he was on sick leave, but in the end, he went to help Marianne. Marianne saw the gaze of one of the maids on her. She noticed that everyone in this estate was looking at her with warmth. Even earlier, when Marianne and Orion walked in the hall, the servants smiled at her and greeted her. Marianne didn't understand why this was so, because she believed that in the miller's house, she was nothing more than a small pebble underfoot. It all seemed ironic to her, because she felt like she was the most emotionless one here. Marianne would be much more comfortable if everyone in this house simply addressed her formally. She would feel more comfortable that way. Orion turned to Marianne, wondering why she hadn't stayed overnight with them yesterday. Orion said they had rooms where she could stay. He even hired a cook to prepare late-night snacks for Marianne. Marianne was surprised. She didn't understand whether Orion had hired someone else, especially for her. Marianne apologized to Orion and said that she usually doesn't go to sleepovers. Orion said that there was no need to apologize, and he understood everything. Marianne suddenly told Orion that she did not understand at all why the young lord was so worried about her. Mariana said that she believes that her mother's marriage is strictly her business, and she has no desire to interfere in their family. Orion didn't understand what Marianne meant. He asked her to explain better. Marianne said that when her mother and the Duke separated, then it was logical that she and Orion would simply lose contact. Orion didn't understand if this meant that they were getting closer, and Marianne was simply afraid to get attached, because she thought that they would lose touch later. Orion collected his thoughts and told Marianne that he didn't think everything revolved around their parents' relationship, and if anything happened, they could still continue communicating. Orion said that it wasn't up to them, that they were now a family, just as he didn't choose to be his father's son. Orion suggested that Marianne accept the fact that they were now a family and get to know each other better. Orion admitted that he was incredibly happy that Marianne became his sister. She didn't know, but Orion had seen her before. Marianne didn't understand what he was talking about. Orion said that he first saw her at His Majesty's New Year's banquet. It was Marianne's first banquet. She remembered very well how delighted her mother was that she was finally invited to such a big banquet. She was very beautiful that day. Marianne was inspired and asked her mother to take her with her. Marianne told Orion that she didn't remember talking to anyone that day, and Orion said that he didn't approach her. Orion admitted that the entire time he was at the banquet, he only watched Marianne from the side, as he did not dare to approach her. Marianne was the child who alone clapped for her mother while she sang, although everyone else was silent, trying to maintain appearances after such a grand performance. Marianne then clapped her hands alone, smiling joyfully. Also, despite the gazes of others, Marianne calmly continued to enjoy her food. As Orion wandered around the room, studying it, he found the little child very interesting. Instead of following strict manners, the way Marianne enjoyed the banquet in her own way seemed wonderful. At that time, everything happened this way because Marianne did not yet know the etiquette at banquets. Now she felt awkward from these memories. Orion said that Marianne did not have high expectations of him. She did not demand anything from him. Despite what other people said, Marianne didn't judge him by his cover. So everything seemed simpler. Orion felt good about it and wanted to treat her better. Orion also admitted that he had been waiting for her for a very long time. From that very moment at the banquet, he wanted to see the child named Marianne. Today was the third day since Marianne began visiting the Duke's house after dinner with the young Duke, thanks to which her preparation for the exam went smoothly. Marianne received not only hard-to-obtain material, but also Lord Rune's colorful descriptions of the Land of Death. Marianne admitted that the Duke's library is truly an ideal place for studying with a ton of books and various records. But one detail still bothered her. Orion hadn't stopped hanging around her all this time. As soon as Marianne noticed him, Orion became happy and asked if she needed his help. Marianne said that she didn't need help. Lord Rune just said that he needed to leave to check on how the knights were training. So Marianne thought that Orion also had his own things to do, but Orion said that he was completely free. Marianne told Orion that he shouldn't put off his business because of her, but Orion didn't understand whether he was really bothering her that much. Marianne admitted to Orion that he was really bothering her. Orion said that he could sit further, but Marianne said that she was distracted by the fact that she saw him. Then, Orion pointed into the distance and said that he could stand there, but from Marianne's position, she would not be able to see him. Marianne realized that Orion would not leave just like that, and decided to tell him directly. She asked him to leave, saying that she would call him if she needed help. Marianne honestly admitted to Orion that his presence here made her uncomfortable. Orion was offended, but he did not argue with Marianne and simply left. Marianne also realized that it sounded too rude. Marianne knew it might seem careless, but she couldn't help it. She was worried. She had another exam coming up. She needed to focus on her studies. Mariana was so engrossed in studying the information that she didn't notice how time flew by and evening arrived. Marianne looked at the tree. There she noticed some light. Marianne thought it was fireflies, but when she came closer, she saw Zen. He sat on a tree branch so as not to attract unnecessary attention to himself, and waited for Marianne to come out. He came down from the tree and asked Marianne why she was so late. Marianne said that she got carried away, and it so happened that she didn't notice that it was already late. Marianne asked Zen how long he had been waiting for her, to which Zen replied that he had arrived not long ago. Marianne suspected that this was true. She hoped that Zen at least did not miss dinner while he was waiting for her. Zen said that he had dinner, but Marianne didn't believe it. She called Zen to follow her, saying that she would cook dinner. They had a lot of wonderful products. Zen said that he preferred meat. Marianne prepared dinner for Zen and put the plate on the table. Zen asked Marianne if she had eaten herself. Marianne said that she ate at the Duke's estate. Zen hoped that Marianne did not eat with Orion. He did not know what to expect from him. Marianne told Zen that she didn't think it was any of his business how she spent time with her mother's fiancé's son. Zen told Marianne that he checked the information about Orion, and as it turned out, he really is an oddball. He asked Marianne to be more careful. Marianne said she would be vigilant. Marianne felt pleased when she watched Zen eat. The food at the estate was expensive and delicious, but even if it was simple and unpleasant, the food prepared by Xenu in this way gave her more pleasant emotions. Marianne didn't know if this was why she and Zen had been so close since their childhood. Zen noticed that Marianne was thinking about something and asked if she wanted to share it with him. Zen knew that Marianne had been visiting the young duke for several days, but he didn't understand if Orion had told her anything. Marianne was surprised, because she hadn't even told Rainey that she had gone to the estate. Marianne asked Zen if he was still following her. Zen said that he was doing it for protection, but he was ready to stop if Marianne didn't like it. Marianne said that she would be fine. Zen asked what was the matter, because half of her worries are usually trifles. Marianne told Zen that the young duke had told her that they had become a family, not because either of them wanted it. Marianne also said that the young duke believes that since they are a family, they must overcome obstacles in order to begin to understand each other. Zen didn't understand what the problem was then. Marianne told him that she just wanted the family to be something special. If the duke saw relationships with others, and the connection with her mother, as something like just family, somehow Marianne felt sad about it. Zen told Marianne that if she felt that way, then it must be so. But Marianne didn't understand whether what the duke said didn't make sense. Zen told Marianne that it didn't matter whether his words made sense. Only what was on her mind mattered. Zen didn't understand whether Marianne really wanted to play family with the duke. Marianne didn't know. She didn't understand anything. She was confused by the young lord's words and the fact that they were now one family. People around Marianne constantly threw him off balance. Marianne understood that this was not bad. She was even surprised that she thought so at all. Here Zen asked Marianne a strange question. He asked her who she would save if she and Orion fell into the water at the same time. Marianne was surprised. Zen asked Marianne to take into account the fact that none of them could swim. Marianne said that she would ask Burton to save them, since she herself could not swim. Zen was unhappy with Marianne's answer. He believed that at such moments she should say that she would save him. Zen really hoped that Marianne didn't treat the guy she had just recently met the same way she treated him, whom she had known almost since birth. Marianne asked Zen to let her go and said that all right, she would save him first. Zen would have been glad if Marianne had said this right away, but Marianne didn't understand why Zen was competing with the young lord. Then Zen got up from his chair and pulled his hood up. Marianne didn't understand if he was already leaving. Zen said that it was time for him to go. Before leaving, Zen reminded Marianne that she had a second exam coming up and asked Marianne to pass it well. Zen also threw Marianne a ring. He explained that it could help her with concentration. Marianne tried on the ring and was delighted. It fit her finger perfectly. Zen was very attentive to such small details. She had the same thing with the necklace Rainey gave her. It fit her perfectly. Marianne realized that her friends were truly worried about her and trying to support her. Marianne decided that she needed to study hard and do well on the exam to justify their support. Few students are interested in the early admission system. Few succeed. And due to the high difficulty of the exam, if you fail it, you can only retake it after 2 years. Without sufficient confidence, few dare to try, which is why the exam is usually only taken by nobles or students of a special class who have received an advanced education. Then some girl approached Marianne. She greeted Marianne and asked what class she was in. The girl had not seen Marianne before. Marianne understood that many people who were here would be interested if someone like her, barely noticeable, suddenly appeared at the exam. Marianne said that she was in the general group of Class B. The girl realized that this was the class where Trevor studied. The girl couldn't even imagine that anyone else from the general group would be a candidate for promotion, except Trevor Barrel. The girl asked Marianne her name. Marianne introduced herself to the girl using the surname Hopen, which was Marianne's temporary fake surname. The girl said that she had never heard this surname. Marianne explained that she was a commoner, so no one knew about the surname. Marianne said that she did not have support from her parents, and her grades were average. Marianne noticed that the girl's interest in her had disappeared, which is why Marianne tried to pass herself off as someone who was nothing special. The girl said that it was time for her to go and left Marianne. The girl believed that, in fact, many commoners deserved respect. Marianne did not care what she said. She just needed to graduate as soon as possible. Mariana was preparing for the exam, but then she was distracted by the ring. She thought that she should take it off after all. The rules for the exam didn't say that she had to remove her jewelry, but Marianne didn't think it was fair that the ring could help her. Then Trevor entered the auditorium. Marianne was surprised that he had just arrived, although the exam had not even begun yet. Trevor greeted Marianne, and she noticed that Trevor had become more familiar over the past week. Trevor approached Marianne and asked if he could sit next to her. Trevor was always sociable, but Marianne did not understand why he suddenly became so friendly right now. Meanwhile, Trevor continued asking Marianne questions. He asked if she had prepared well for the exams. Trevor said that he hadn't had time to prepare for the exam properly, so he was a little worried. Marianne noticed this. Marianne understood that Trevor was smiling kindly, but something still confused her and seemed suspicious. Then a girl came up to Trevor, smiling sweetly. She asked him for a pen. Trevor happily lent her a pen. After Trevor finished being polite to the girl, he looked at Marianne. She did not understand whether the girl really wanted to make her jealous. Then Trevor noticed Marianne's pen and said that it was cool. Marianne was surprised. It was a fountain pen with the rookie crest. It was a limited edition. It was a gift from Rainey. Marianne told Trevor that her friend Rainey gave her the pen, and Trevor remembered seeing Marianne and Rainey together. The girl, who heard that Marianne was talking to Rainey, was surprised. She remembered where she heard Marianne's name from. It was on her that Rainey bet everything she had. Half the school was involved in betting on the promotion exam. Winning was unrealistic, even if you guessed just 3. Marianne heard about this for the first time. She was shocked. Marianne did not understand whether Rainey got into this again, even after she was punished for betting last time. Raina told Marianne that she shouldn't worry, and that the exam was nothing. But right behind her back, Rainey ruined everything by using her name. The girls thought that since Rainey had bet on Marianne, it meant that she had great talent. And besides, Rainey had put everything she had on the line. It was said that Rainey did not put a penny on Trevor, who, by the way, was the strongest candidate. Then the teacher entered the office. He noticed that the students looked tense. He thought that this was very good. The teacher believed that if the students wanted to pass the exam, they would definitely need this fighting spirit. Every single person in the room demonstrated a good attitude towards their studies and excellent results day after day, and they are also the ones who want to grow and develop further. The teacher said that their academy is ready to provide all opportunities for such students. The teacher also reminded the students that if they fail the exam, they can only retake it in 2 years. If they fail the exam, not only will they lose their chance to graduate early, but their honor will be trampled, as everyone in the audience was each other's rival. After this, the exam began. The teacher walked around and watched the students. Mariana did not expect that the examiner's gaze would be so frightening. Now, Marianne was glad that the young lord was staring at her during the preparations. Now it was much easier for her to concentrate. Suddenly, Marianne felt a severe headache. She did not understand what it was. A professor approached Marianne and asked what had happened. Marianne said that everything was fine. Her hand had just twitched from nerves. Marianne didn't understand what it was. She felt a sudden severe headache. She had never felt anything like this before. Then, the one who was sitting behind Trevor and Marianne told the professor that Trevor was behaving very strangely. Marianne looked at Trevor, and he really looked strange. The professor asked Trevor to pull himself together, but that was the last thing Trevor heard, after which he lost consciousness. The professor declared an emergency alarm and said that the exam would have to be suspended. Marianne was confused. She didn't understand what had happened at all. First, she felt a sharp headache, and then Trevor lost consciousness. There was chaos in the classroom. The students didn't understand what was happening. Everyone wanted to know the details. At first, everything was fine with Trevor, but then he suddenly lost consciousness, and he also had black blood flowing everywhere. Marianne was also confused. She didn't expect something like this to happen, and still couldn't understand what had happened. Then the professor returned to the office and told the students that they could go home today. He promised to give instructions on how to pass the exam later. The students were upset and wondered if the questions would change. Mariana decided to go home and rest. As she was leaving the office, Marianne met the eyes of that same girl, and she looked at Marianne strangely. Then she just left. Marianne was surprised. She couldn't understand what had just happened. Rainey was waiting for Marianne in the yard. She approached her and started asking her how everything went and whether she had coped. Marianne realized that Rainey didn't yet know that the exam had been suspended. She thought the teachers were keeping it a secret from the others. Marianne asked Rainey why she was so excited about this exam. Rainey replied that it was all because of the bet. Marianne asked Rainey if she had bet on her. Rainey said that she was not worried about the bet. She was most worried about Marianne. Marianne told Rainey that she would not stop her, as it was just simple fun that did not harm anyone. Marianne told Rainey that she knew she had been organizing bets on who would pass the exam. Marianne was glad that Rainey was helping her, but she didn't want Rainey to bet on her. Rainey promised that this would not happen again. Rainey asked Marianne, "What about winning?" Marianne said that no one would win since they didn't finish the exam. Marianne started to tell Rainey about what happened at the exam, but suddenly she felt that strange pain again. Rainey noticed that something strange was happening to Marianne. She got scared and rushed to her friend. But Zen got ahead of Rainey. Marianne started to fall and lose consciousness. Zen jumped up to Marianne and grabbed her. Time passed. Zen brought Marianne to some place and laid her on the bed. He did not leave her side for a minute. Then Marianne opened her eyes, and Rainey and Zen immediately rushed to her. Marianne started to get up. She wanted to ask Rainey what happened, but Zen stopped her, saying that it would be better for her to lie down a little longer. Mariana said that she was already fine. Then someone brought her a glass of water and asked her to drink it. It was Bertine. Marianne thanked him. Bertine was happy. He noticed that Marianne's complexion had become better than it had been, which meant that she was already feeling better. Zen walked up to Marianne and touched her forehead. Then he said that her temperature had dropped significantly. Marianne asked Rainey what happened to her. Rainey was surprised that Marianne did not remember anything. Rainey explained to Marianne that she lost consciousness while they were talking. Mariana was surprised. She remembered that before this, she again felt a headache, like during the exam. Marianne found this strange, as she was not the type to faint without reason, and the thought of what had happened before worried her. Marianne said that something was wrong with the room where they took the exam. Zen was surprised. Marianne described how Trevor had passed out just like her, and Burton was surprised that Trevor had even taken the exam with her. Mariana said that he suddenly lost consciousness. Panic arose, and because of this, the exam was canceled. Marianne asked the kids if they didn't know what happened during the exam, and they said it was the first time they'd heard about Trevor passing out. Burton said that since the exam was canceled, his condition was very bad. Marianne said that he was bleeding from the mouth. Mariana said that they couldn't even give him first aid, so they took him away immediately. And then Mariana didn't know what happened to him. Zen found it strange that Trevor was bleeding from the mouth. He asked what color the blood was. Marianne said that the color of the blood was black. Zen asked Marianne if she still wore the necklace from Rainey. Marianne said yes, and showed it to Zen. Rainey told Marianne to wear this necklace always and everywhere. Zen looked closely at the necklace. He noticed that it had turned black, and immediately understood what the matter was. Zen asked Marianne if she had felt any pain before, perhaps something strange. Mariana said that during the exam, she felt a headache for a second. The pain was the same as before she passed out. The guys understood what was going on. Burton was surprised that this happened in the academy itself. Marianne did not understand what they were talking about. Zen pointed to Marianne's necklace and told her that it contained sacred power. Moreover, Zen cast a protection spell on Marianne, which is one that strikes back if someone harms her. Since this is a sacred power, it even prevails over curses, which indicates that it is already active. The boys believed that while Marianne was taking the exam, there was someone next to her who was cursed. Marianne didn't understand whether anyone in the audience was trying to curse her. Marianne didn't understand whether they really thought that Trevor wanted to curse her. She couldn't believe it. Marianne didn't understand what his point was in attacking her out of all the students. Burton believed that Trevor wanted something specific from Marianne. Burton asked Marianne if Trevor had ever tried to talk to her without reason when they had nothing to talk about. Marianne remembered that they had the same topic to study, the land of death. Zen asked Marianne to let him look at the necklace. the curse could be tracked. Marianne was curious what Zen would do with Trevor when he found him. Marianne hoped that Zen wasn't going to do anything bad to Trevor. Zen reminded Marianne that Trevor attacked her first. Zen asked Marianne to calm down and said that they would leave no traces. Burton and Rainey confirmed Zen's words. Marianne was excited. Burton told her that they were partly joking, but he still thought that it couldn't be left like that. Now Marianne needed to go to the sanctuary, explain the situation, and undergo an examination. Marianne promised that she would definitely go there sometime. Rainey knew Marianne was exhausted and suggested she go home and rest. But Marianne told Rainey to go alone. She needed to go to the Duke's estate. Rainey didn't understand why she needed this. Marianne told Rainey that her mother would be there today, and she needed to meet her. The maid informed the family that Lady Marianne had arrived, and then Marianne herself entered the dining room. Tatiana was incredibly happy to see her daughter home. Mariana was so busy with exams that she and her mother had not seen each other for a long time. Tatiana approached her daughter. She was worried. As her daughter looked completely exhausted, Tatiana began to ask Mariana what had happened. She didn't understand whether Mariana hadn't slept all night. Marianne thought that this was all the consequences of the curse. She decided to forget about it for now. Tatiana hugged her daughter and asked her to eat well and rest today. Marianne sat down next to Orion. The Duke began to ask her about whether she and Orion had become friends. It seemed to the Duke that Orion was very reserved today. Marianne was surprised. She couldn't understand whether the Duke didn't know his own son at all. Tatiana asked her husband not to start. She said that she and Mariana had the same problems. Marianne always said it straight out if she didn't like something, but it was difficult to understand. And that was the problem. The Duke said that one could get used to it over time, and he asked Marianne what dessert she would like. The Duke asked his cook Irma to cook something right away. Marianne said that she would eat anything. Orion intervened in the dialogue and said that Marianne likes orange juice. Orion said that Marianne usually drinks black tea at lunch, and she usually prefers layered desserts. Orion also noticed that Marianne often skipped breakfast and usually ate a light salad for lunch. He also believed that Marianne needed to be taken care of, since she ate very little because of her exams. Orion looked at Marianne. He wanted her approval. He thought that during this time he knew everything about her diet. Marianne was impressed. Orion was everywhere except for the orange juice, because that time she ordered it for him. The Duke, judging by Orion's stories, understood that Marianne and his son spent a lot of time together. Mariana decided to change the subject and asked her mother how their trip went. She heard that they went to the carnival. Tatiana said that they simply didn't have time to go for a walk. During their honeymoon, they were busy enjoying their time at home. Marianne and Orion were confused. They understood exactly what Tatiana meant. The Duke reminded his wife that such things cannot be spoken about in front of the children. Tatiana said that children have been growing up very quickly lately and already know a lot. Marianne knew that her mother spent time with the Duke, but was surprised that she spoke about it so openly. However, Marianne noticed that Orion had fallen silent for now. Because of this, he was clearly uncomfortable. Here, Tatiana asked her daughter if she would have come to their house if she had not asked her to. Marianne apologized to her mother and said that she still felt uneasy being at the Duke's estate. Mariana and Tatiana were left alone. Tatiana noticed that her daughter was not wearing a necklace and wondered why she wasn't wearing it. Tatiana knew that this necklace was given to Marianne by friends, and she wore it constantly. She became interested in where it went. Marianne said that something happened to it and it had to be repaired. Tatiana thought about it. It seemed strange to her that her daughter had given away the necklace she wore every day for repair. Marianne found her mother's words strange, and she asked Tatiana if she knew anything about this necklace. Tatiana said that she couldn't know anything about something that held such unusual magic. Mariana told her mother that she had no idea about this and asked Tatiana why she hadn't told her anything, and she replied that the necklace was incredibly expensive and Mariana simply wouldn't wear it. Tatiana told Marianne that it was a gift given sincerely by her friends. They cared about Marianne so much that they were even willing to risk treating Tatiana harshly. Tatiana asked her daughter again what happened to the necklace. Mariana said that she would only find out after the repair. Tatiana asked her daughter to promise that if something happened, she would make the best choice for herself. She asked her daughter not to worry about her or anyone else, but to put herself first. Mariana was surprised, but made a promise to her mother, and Tatiana reminded her that she could always turn to her for help. Tatiana believed that Marianne could also turn to Orion for help. It seemed to her that they were getting along, but Marianne said that this was not so. Tatiana was about to leave, but Mariana told her that she was always worried about something. Mariana believed that when Tatiana treated someone sincerely, it was very easy to stab her in the back. Then she became closed and felt empty inside. Marianne wondered if her mother was afraid of this. Tatiana replied that she was not afraid, since this emptiness could be filled with new passion. Mariana said that it was difficult for her to watch someone leave. It hurt her. Therefore, getting into her heart is a heavy burden. Tatiana advised her daughter to talk to him about it sometime. Tatiana thought that Marianne meant that they would become strangers again, after having been so kind to them, if Tatiana and the Duke separated. Tatiana thought that Mariana meant Orion Miller, that she didn't want to get closer to him only because she was afraid of losing him later. Marianne tried to tell her mother that she wasn't talking about him, but she said it was time to go to bed. Tatiana understood that her daughter must also be very tired after the exams, so she suggested not to stay late, and Mariana agreed with her. Before going to bed, Marianne thought about her mother's words, about how she didn't want to get closer to Orion only because she was afraid of losing him later. That night, Marianne realized why she hadn't paid attention to the young Duke. Because of this, she was angry with herself. She couldn't properly respond to his sincerity, and therefore, despite being tired, Marianne couldn't sleep well. That night, Marianne had a very strange dream, in which she was still just a child. Mom asked her what Marianne would feel if suddenly one day her mother disappeared. Mariana was scared. She grabbed her mother and started crying. She didn't understand where her mother was going. She asked her to stay. Tatiana hugged her daughter and laughed. She told Mariana that she was just joking. Tatiana told her daughter that she would be back late today and asked her to play with the nanny. Then, Marianne saw herself as an adult, calling for her mother and not understanding what would happen if she really did suddenly disappear. Marianne didn't understand how she would live if this happened. It would be too terrifying and sad for her. Marianne understood that everyone is destined to leave sooner or later, but it was still hard for her to think about it. After this, Marianne's sleep was interrupted, and the girl woke up in horror. She sat on the bed and began to remember the dream. Marianne did not understand why she had dreamed it at all. Marianne was worried that the curse would still have effects, but after a night's rest she felt refreshed. She thought that all this was thanks to Zen's perfectly working magic. Walking down the corridor, Marianne heard a strange sound from the yard. She went to the window and saw Orion training in the yard. Marianne noticed that the young Duke still looked quite normal, but then Orion noticed Marianne. He was distracted from his training, and smiling, began to call her. Marianne was upset because Orion again started making that stupid face that she didn't like at all. Because of yesterday's conversation with her mother, Marianne somehow felt more constrained. Rainey told her friends that rumors had already spread everywhere. Everyone at the academy knew that Trevor had passed out during the exam. Because of this, the entire academy was on edge. The Magic Tower and the Sanctuary were already investigating this matter. No one could understand what Trevor felt under the influence of dark magic, although it could have been the work of heretics. Burton thought that classes would be cancelled, but this did not happen, and it is unknown how long this case will be investigated. Burton said that Count Amber himself even came to the academy, and the director was completely at a loss. Marianne remembered that Trevor had the support of the Earl's family, so his guardian could simply turn a blind eye to this, so the academy would no longer be able to hush up this matter. The case was growing more and more, and Marianne really hoped that she would not be drawn into all of this. Marianne and Rainey stood and waited for someone who could confirm that Trevor himself had attacked Marianne. Burton said that the bishop was too busy, so he could not give a clear answer to the question of how much longer they would have to wait for him. Rainey said she would then take the opportunity to greet the bishop herself. As a representative of the Ruque estate, she couldn't come to the shrine without shining her face. Rainey carried herself as a true believer, even though it was just for the sake of it. Burton told Marianne that he would accompany Rainey and return immediately. He asked Marianne to wait for him. Mariana couldn't believe that she was in this place again. The last time she was in the Central Temple was when Tatiana's wedding took place. Then a woman came up to Marianne. She stood and looked at Marianne. Then she came closer and asked Marianne how she ended up there, since judging by her outfit, she was not of noble birth. The woman said that this was not a place where any family could go. Marianne asked the woman if it couldn't be that she herself was from nobility. The woman said that a nobleman of such standing would not come here, let alone some servant or maid. Marianne said that she came with a friend. The woman asked Mariana why she had come there, whether it was to donate money. Then the woman said that it didn't matter. Many people came there and didn't say why exactly. Mariana asked the woman if it was okay for her, as a priest, to just sit there. The woman said that there was no end in sight to those coming to the church to confess. But the woman believed that, even if this was now the only thing she was entrusted with, there still had to be a balance. After all, sooner or later, everyone needs rest. Mariana agreed with the woman. This work seemed exhausting to her, so the woman thought it would be great if someone offered her a helping hand. Before Marianne could understand anything, the woman had already grabbed her hand and was dragging her somewhere. At the door, the woman asked Marianne to come back in a couple of hours, where she would replace her. Mariana was left alone in a small room. She hoped that while she was sitting there, no one would come to her. Marianne never thought she'd find herself in a confessional, but it was much cozier than she thought. Mariana thought that this was probably why people here felt more relaxed and could share secrets. Mariana automatically reached for her neck. She wanted to touch the necklace. She was used to it. Marianne remembered that in addition to the necklace, she had a ring from Zen, and she began to examine it. Marianne understood that Zen had clearly cast some kind of spell on the ring, without thinking about what she thought about it. Then someone spoke behind the screen, and Marianne was frightened by the unexpectedness. A voice behind the screen asked the priest if he remembered what he had told her before. Marianne didn't know what to do. The guy said that the orders his master gave him were too many. Marianne thought that the guy was from the Lord, and he must be a knight, but knights are usually not given orders. The boy reminded the priest that his lord, who lived obsessed with the sword, had acquired a younger sister, and thanks to this, the knights were able to rest. Recently, he even made training voluntary. It felt like freedom. But now his lord was locked in the library, and the problems were growing with every second. Marianne asked the knight what problems he was talking about. He explained that the Lord had begun to read strange books and began to order him to test certain things on them. After his friend's method of winning his sister over didn't work, the Lord began looking for a solution in books. He often reads novels that feature a younger sister. And the essence of their powers is that the older brother behaves towards his little sister, as it is written in the novels. The knight was in despair. He asked the priest if he could imagine this. His lady was already looking at him with contempt. The knight admitted that it would be better if he trained all day long. Marianne understood him. This story reminded her of something. The knight said that the young lord realized that it wasn't working, but he still couldn't stop. Marianne realized that the point was that the poor communication between his lord and his sister was causing problems for the knights. Marianne advised the knight to try to solve the problem from the root, but the knight did not understand whether his father really thought he needed to eliminate the cause. Marianne said that was true, and he just needed to remove the part that was causing the problems, but the knight said that was impossible. The knight didn't understand how he could get rid of his lord's little sister. Marianne said that wasn't what she meant, and explained that he needed to help the two men work things out. The knight said he would try his best, but Marianne felt it sounded more like career advice than a confession. Then the bell rang, which meant that the man's time allotted for talking with the priest had ended. The knight thanked the priest and began to get ready. Marianne was glad that the time was up. She was completely exhausted, listening to this. Marianne decided to look out the window. She wanted to get out of there before another one came. On the street, she noticed the knight who had just been with her leaving, and she immediately saw the uniform of the knights of the Miller estate on him. She remembered the knight talking about how the young lord had ordered them to check the actions with the younger sister written in the novels. Marianne decided to advise Orion not to read such strange novels anymore. Marianne left the church, and Bertin immediately approached her. He had already searched her, but he had not expected her to go to the confessional. Bertin sincerely hoped that Marianne had not listened to that knight's confession, but Marianne said that she had no choice. Bertin guessed what had happened. He was glad that at least he hadn't caught Marianne. he decided to return to their case. Soon Bertin took Marianne to the priest. Marianne was in shock. Marianne hoped it was not what she thought, but Bertin said that it was the priest he had spoken of, who had asked him for help. The woman asked Mariana how everything went, whether she was justified in listening to the confession. Mariana admitted that she realized that nothing comes easy. The woman said that it sounded like Mariana had already gained experience. The woman said that she felt uneasy about fulfilling Bertin's request, so she decided to test Marianne and asked her to come closer. The woman thought it was not surprising that an ordinary child like Marianne was filled with sacred power. The woman thought that Marianne had drunk sacred water. The woman looked at Bertin and said that she thought she felt like he was stealing the holy water, to which Bertin replied that she just kept sending him to their annoying banquets. So Bertin believed that he deserved at least a little of the holy water. The woman could not understand what the others saw in Bertin, that they adored him so much. Marianne didn't understand what they were talking about, and then the puzzle in her head came together. She realized that the water she drank was sacred. Bertin reminded Marianne that she had said that the curse no longer had any effect, and he was glad that it had helped her. Rainey asked Marianne how she was feeling. The woman said that for now, everything should be fine with her. The woman understood that the guy who put a curse on her had suffered. Marianne said that he had lost a lot of blood. The woman said that, as expected, the curse placed on Marianne was called the puppet. It was some kind of brainwashing and hypnosis, thanks to which a person could be controlled. This curse was used very rarely. The woman found it outrageous that Trevor used this curse just for brainwashing purposes. If Trevor used this power often, then he should have stored quite a lot of flowers. The energy of corruption grows well if used on young men. Marianne remembered that Trevor had an inappropriate number of flowers growing. She didn't understand whether they were also intended for the spell. That was all that was known. The rest could only be found out from the sorcerer himself. The academy was closely watched, and it was impossible to reach Trevor. But Burton believed that this would become possible with time. The woman asked to try to bring Trevor to them alive. Then they could interrogate him properly. Marianne wondered if there was a chance that Trevor had simply made a mistake and didn't mean to do it. They hadn't even communicated with Trevor. Marianne didn't understand why he would curse her, and the woman said that it was unlikely. The woman didn't think that someone who dabbled in spells could be so stupid. Rainey suggested that Trevor might need her exam paper, since he sat at her desk. Marianne didn't think Trevor would risk everything for the sake of an assessment. He had a patron and was on the verge of being officially registered. Rainey was furious. She didn't understand what Trevor wanted from Marianne then. So far, they have only one option: wait and watch. They don't know enough yet to do anything. The woman said the priest's investigations could only lead to a formal procedure. But some professors at the academy suspected it was a curse. Someone could have expressed their dissatisfaction, and then the investigation would have grown in scale. They will have to call upon high-ranking priests to organize a deep search for the curse-type mana. But then it will be known that the matter is not so insignificant. But the academy could hardly allow this, because then they would have to check every student. Then the smug nobles will start to protest, which is why the academy will avoid it at all costs. Mariana understood that it didn't matter whether they hushed up the case or continued the investigation, because either option would cause difficulties. Marianne hoped it wouldn't get any worse. Rainey reminded Marianne that she was in mortal danger. Marianne understood this, but she did not want her guard to be called upon again, because then everyone would know that Marianne, the child from the Miller estate. Rainey agreed that this would indeed be a problem. The guys decided to go. There was no more information. There was no point in them staying. Burton thanked the woman and said that they would contact her again if they needed help. But the woman called Burton shameless. Everyone was interested in how the academy would react to this. Trevor embarrassed Rainey. He seemed dubious to her, and Marianne did not understand why she in particular. Remembering how he treated her, she still thought that the only thing that united them was their joint project. Here, Marianne thought that if it wasn't about the grade, then he might just need the results of her project.